Welcome to Offsides. I'm Shannon Wilkerson, here with Brandon Comeaux. Thank you for joining us for today's broadcast. We will be with you till 6 o'clock. And for our 5 o'clock hour, we're going to be discussing divorce rates, especially those here in Louisiana. It turns out that Louisiana has the fourth highest divorce rate in the country. And so this sparked an interest for Brandon and I to discuss divorce as a whole, divorce here in Louisiana. Maybe see if we can get some callers with some opinions about why Louisiana has such a high divorce rate compared to most of the other states here in the country. There's a lot of opinions, professional and personal, out there as to why people get divorced the most. What's the most common reason? Of course, there's always financial reasons. That seems to be very high on the list.
Yeah.
Expectations, unreasonable expectations from the marriage. That seems to be a very common one. And so these kind of issues arise in a relationship, and all too often people are unable to get through them, and it lands in divorce. One of the statistics that we came across was that divorce happens here. Divorce happens here in Louisiana twice as often as marriage.
Yeah, we'll give you the stat on that. So according to this study, the marriage rate in Louisiana is 11.9 per 1,000 people. The divorce rate is 20.8 per 1,000 married people. So there you go.
Yeah, twice as many people getting divorced as getting married. And that's kind of sad when you think about it. Yeah, and of course, Brandon is married. We're both happily married, and can't imagine really any other way.
Right.
I believe that people, whether you're religious or not, I believe that people are kind of built and made to have a partner.
Yeah.
Now, not for everybody. I know some people that have spent their entire lives or most of their entire lives single, and they're very content.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not trying to push marriage on anybody. But I'll tell you, I've got my opinion. I've had this for a while as to the most common reason that divorce occurs.
Okay.
Now, hear me out on this, okay?
All right.
Basically, it's because women change and men stay the same. Here's the example. You take a woman, and you know this girl, and she, or woman, and she's got a certain group of friends, and she likes a certain type of food, and she wears certain types of clothing, and she likes to listen to certain kinds of music, and she likes enjoying certain types of television shows. Okay, you take the same woman, and you go 10 years. Okay, 10 years passes. She's usually going to have a completely different group of friends, enjoy different food, listen to different kind of music, wear different kind of clothes, and watches different kinds of TV shows or entertainment.
Right.
Men, on the other hand, same thing. You take a guy, and he has one or two friends, all right?
Maybe two.
Maybe two. He likes a certain type of food. He wears a certain kind of clothes. Same scenario, okay? He listens to the same kind of music, and he watches certain television shows. You wait 10 years later, all that stays the same.
Right.
Okay? He's wearing the same kind of clothes. He's going to the same restaurants, ordering the same meal, all right? Well, the reason that I think that this has such a negative effect on marriages is because a woman will look at the man after 10 years and resent him because he is the same person. All too often, you're the exact same person. You've been sitting in that same damn chair, watching the same programs for 10 years. Nothing is different about you. You're boring. You haven't grown at all. You haven't evolved as a person. You're completely the same guy as I married 10 years ago. The man will look at the woman and say, I don't know who you are. You are a completely different person that I married 10 years ago. I want the same person I married. You're completely different. And so what I think that is what breaks down relationships, especially marriages, too much, because the woman changes. Women need to grow, and they need to evolve. They need to experience new things. Right. Okay? Men don't want that. They want to stay the same. And so when this takes place and the relationship is not able to, or the people in the relationship are not able to make the adjustments because of the woman's changing, or because of the man or the man's lack of changing.
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the real problems that happen that breaks down marriages.
I hear exactly what you're saying. I mean, as guys, we like for things to stay constant. as you said, women will change their minds. And so sometimes as guys, we'll be stuck in thinking, okay, this is what we want to do. This is where we're going to go. And then all of a sudden something else gets brought up and it's a complete just shock to our system.
That's right.
Because we're more constant. And again, we always talk about the differences between men and women. And that is obviously a huge difference.
Huge.
And so both have to be able to make adjustments to each other.
That's right. The man has got to be able to accept the fact that, hey, look, that whoever you're marrying, that's going to be a different person 10 years from now. Okay, now their identity, their overall identity stayed the same.
Right.
Okay, and another reason, that I think that marriages break down, especially with young people, is that because I think that people go into marriages expecting their lives to be the same. Okay, you've got your life before you were married, and then you've got your life after you're married. Okay, these are two different lives. And people don't want to let go of the person. I'm never going to change who I am. Well, you know what? That's not going to work out. Okay, because you've got your life before and you've got your life after that that marriage takes place. And I think that really breaks down. For example, you may be somebody that goes to happy hour every day, Monday through Friday. Well, that might not work out in your marriage. You got to let that go. Okay, you want your marriage to work, you got to let that go.
You got to be flexible.
You got to be flexible. That's right. That was who I was before I was married.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you still can't go every now and then, but that was who I was before. Or you may have some friends that are really crazy singles, okay? And y'all go out every now and then, and these are single guys or single girls, and that may not be okay for the marriage.
Right.
Okay, so you've got your life before, you've got your life after, and so the trick is to maintain your own identity while accepting your new life.
Yeah.
And people have a hard time with that. People going, I've been going to happy hour at the Bulldog every day, Monday through Friday. Just because I'm married doesn't mean I can't do that anymore. Well, that might not necessarily be true.
Well, because it's not considered to the other person, and especially the other person that wants to spend time with you.
That's right. You know, so you got to let go of your life before and accept your new life. And so the reason that those are my opinions as to why I think marriages break down all too often.
No, I completely get that. 232-1542, 232-1542. Now, this is interesting. As I was kind of looking over this and preparing for the show, now, Louisiana, we just gave you the stats. Louisiana overall is struggling when it comes to divorce rates. But when you look at some of the studies that have been done over the past few years, you look at divorce really skyrocketed and peaked in the 70s and the 80s. And you always hear, well, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Well, that number is actually trending towards not being true, because what you're having, you mentioned a lot of younger people, Shannon. A lot of younger people nowadays are waiting longer. You know, there's always exceptions, and there's always maybe a certain group of people that they all get married young.
Yeah.
But overall, young people are choosing more to get an established career and then get married.
Yeah.
And so they're waiting a little bit later on. One thing that they're finding in these studies is when you have, you look at the family dynamic. You look at the traditional family dynamic where the male is the breadwinner and the female is the housewife. Well, in Louisiana, for instance, the median income for the local median family income is like $10,000 less than the average for everywhere else. So when you have that traditional roles that's being played there, if the husband is not making a good bit of money, if they're kind of struggling in their job, well, that's when the financial issue becomes something.
Yeah.
But nowadays you have people that are where they're both pursuing their own careers. They're getting married a little bit later on, and they've both got college degrees. So the studies are showing that when they're bringing those two incomes in, they're both not only motivated within their careers, which obviously have to prioritize family too, but they're also bringing in money, which they're not having to worry so much about financial issues as opposed to some of the single family households.
I agree. The flip side of that is that when they wait longer, it's harder to make those changes.
That's true.
Okay. It's harder to say, well, no, I'm going to, because your life's got to change.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Your life's got to change. You're a different. Right. You used to be a guy. Now you're a husband.
Yes.
You used to be a girl. Now you're a wife. Okay. And when they wait longer, sometimes it's harder for people to let go of some of those things that their lives, because now they've lived longer and they've got habits and they've got traditions and they've got things that they've always liked to do. And you might not be able to do that anymore, okay? Right. And you can't resent your marriage for making those changes either.
Well, and that's one thing when you have the separate careers as you become married, trying to make sure that your family does not get prioritized behind your work. even though you're used to working so much, trying to make sure that you do the little things that shows your spouse, hey, you're more important to me than my job, and I'm going to prioritize you in these ways.
Yep.
And so 232-1542.
A lot of calls coming in.
Oh, yeah. Let's get some in. Caller, you're on Offsides. Go ahead.
All right, guys. How you guys doing?
Good.
All right. I don't know if you guys thought about this aspect, but you have a lot of oil and gas workers that go offshore a lot, and also a lot of military bases and stuff here. So,
That's true.
you're going to be separated from your families for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And I've seen it while I was in the military, a lot of people cheating and divorces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, separation. Yeah. Now, sometimes that works very well for marriages. Sometimes people need that distance.
Right.
But I think that would be very challenging for a relationship to be away from each other for extended periods of times over a period of decades normally.
Yeah. Well, I had an Army buddy, as a matter of fact, or a friend that I knew in the Army that had a failed marriage, in the sense was his spouse was cheating on him as he was out, overseas for our country.
Yeah.
Putting his life on the line.
It never works when that happens.
Well, and it happens on both sides. I mean, there are women that serve overseas that husbands do the same thing. And it's unfortunate because, that person is over there doing what they can. The other person is missing them. But then sometimes it may be a thing where they're missing them and they can't stand being apart from them, or they're not getting enough of their spouse that's not there. And so they're finding that quote unquote fulfillment somewhere else.
Yeah, well,
and ends up in divorce.
Listen, John Lennon, when he said all you need is love, that's just a hippie.
Yeah.
Okay, you need love in a marriage.
Right.
That's you got to have that, but you need a lot more than that.
Yeah.
A lot of people that are in love can't make a marriage work. I mean, all too often people love each other, they got to go their separate ways. So love is just one aspect of making a marriage really successful.
All right, caller, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go right on ahead.
Oh, I was the one just talking 2 seconds ago, but I totally agree with what you guys are saying.
Okay.
I appreciate you guys.
All right,
thank you.
232-1542, 232-1542 if you want to weigh in on our topic today. Caller, you're up next. Go right on ahead.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
I'm with that. Hello.
Go for it, caller.
I'm with Shannon, man. He hit the nail right on the head. He ought to be a marriage counselor.
No. I appreciate the compliment, but that is a career I definitely cannot pursue.
Look, man, you hit the nail on the head. I'm like this. I let them have their way. I don't have to change. I can change with them. However they want, however she wants. I've been married 44 years.
Well, you know how to do it then.
Let them have it their way.
Yeah,
No
and somebody like yourself been married for over 4 decades now. Okay, when you think about all the different changes that your spouse has gone through over those years, they don't they're always changing. Okay, a woman needs that. They need to grow as a person. They need to evolve. There's a movie years ago called Same Time Next Year. It's Alan Alda, the guy from MASH. Okay, and he's got this ongoing affair over a period of many years with this girl, and they meet one weekend every year, same time.
Right.
And every time she shows up, she's completely different from the last time. And it's a perfect illustration of how women, they will continually evolve and change. And man, look, if you got a problem with it, it's not going to work out.
No. But the wife tells me all the time, "Oh, you don't care." I say, "Yes, I do. I'm not going to sit here and argue. Have it your way. However you want it, I'm fine with it."
Yeah, that's right.
I don't care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't be here.
All right. I hear you. Thanks for the call, man.
Caller. Well, I'll tell you this. One thing that's really cool about marriage is, as guys, just speaking from the guy perspective, there's certain things that we go about doing and we get in our routine. And then when we find that special someone, they just open up like a new kind of horizon, new way of looking at things for us. And I mean, I give a TV example, okay, going from watching, say, football all the time to watching shows that are more, couple-friendly shows.
Yeah.
Just things that you can kind of get into together. I mean, you were talking, Shannon, about how much you enjoy watching with your family and stuff, educational type shows and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
Shows that you can really get together and enjoy that's going to pique the interest of everyone.
Yeah.
It's going to pique both of your interests. And I think that's something that kind of just opens up a new kind of world from the guy perspective when a woman comes in and and just
well, they
opens
like
you up to
trying
stuff.
new things.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they get makeovers. Okay, seriously, psychologically, that's why a woman likes to get a makeover. They like change. They like to evolve. So,
right. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Caller, you're on Offsides. Go ahead.
I wanted to go ahead and put my 2 cents in on this. I know a lot of marriages, especially second marriages, they have the children that are involved.
Yeah.
And the children sometimes don't like the spouse.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
That causes conflict, especially between, husband and wife. No, you can't go ahead and discipline my child, or that's my kid. You can't do that.
Yeah, that's complicated right there, man. I tell you, when there's a second marriage, and that's very common now, and both people, or at least one person, sometimes both people bring children into the new marriage from their former marriages, that can be a very complicated situation to try to work out.
Oh, yeah, and it causes conflict, and then the first word is divorce.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for the call.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, 232-1542 is the number to call to get in on today's conversation. We'll be right back.
I totally forgot about taking breaks.
Yeah, we got it. You're listening to Offsides, Brandon Comeaux and Shannon Wilkerson, News Talk 96.5 KPEL, talking about Louisiana being the state with the fourth highest rate of divorce. Unfortunately, another area where Louisiana is high ranking in the bad stuff and low ranking in the good stuff. And so one thing that I came across that was very interesting was the average wedding cost. Now, this is in Louisiana, $22,700 is the average wedding cost, and that's actually the 10th lowest.
Yeah, I've got an answer for that too. All right. We're going to get to the phone lines, guys, so you just hold on. Here's my answer. Okay, because all too often, the parents of the bride pay for that. All right. Here's my deal. If you have a daughter and she wants to get married and you're planning on paying for the wedding, great. Enjoy it. Spend the money and enjoy every minute of it. It's what you save for as a parent. But here's the deal. All right. You need to tell your daughter that if she gets a divorce within 5 years, she's got to pay you back. Okay. Because all too often, and I see this all the time. People have a big old wedding, and in the long run, all they really want to do is they want to throw a party. All right, they throw this big wedding, and a year later they're getting divorced, and they just blew 20 or 30 grand on a wedding, and the parents have just come up with this money to throw a big party. So that would be my deal. I said, listen, okay, fine, you want to get married, we're going to pay for the whole thing, all right? But if you don't stay married for at least 5 years, you got to pay me back. Yeah. And you got to deliver one grandchild.
You got to deliver
one grandchild, okay? I got to get a return on this investment.
Well, I think if those were imposed, those sanctions were imposed, it'd be a lot harder to get a divorce. Or they'd be less likely to get a divorce.
They might be less likely to get married, period.
Yeah. Well, that too. And that is one thing.
They might take it more seriously. Hey, man, are we going to make it 5 years? Because if not, we both got to come up with 50% of what this wedding costs.
Well, and that is one thing too with younger people over the past couple of decades too. There are fewer of them that are getting married as well, which is leading to why the divorce rate is dropping steadily as well over the past couple of decades.
I hear you.
All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're on Offsides. Go ahead.
One thing I think I've noticed in life, especially in these marriages between these younger couples, they get out of high school, they get married, the guy goes in the military, whatever the case may be, goes work offshore, is that I think a lot of these couples, they're more in love with the idea of being in love than they are with each other, and they're in love with the situation.
Yeah, that's right. That's a very good description of what I think happens a lot too. They just love the idea of being married. They love the idea of being in love, and they love the idea of being a husband or a wife. But they really
because
go ahead.
It's just I'm sorry. It's just man. I see that so much nowadays because. Marriage is anything but a dream. It's a job. It's hard work. I'm sure you know that as well as I do, Shannon.
We all know. Yeah, it is. It's a full-time job, and Brandon knows it too. He's reasonably or arguably still a newlywed.
Yeah.
How long you been married?
About a year and a half.
Okay. Well, you see, you're still it's still all a lie. Okay?
No, but I get what the caller's saying because love is not just an emotion, it's a choice.
Yeah,
and there
that's
are
right.
days where you really may not like each other, but you still have to choose to love that person because that's the person that you are bonded together with. And so the caller's right. Love, there is a lot of work. And some people will push back against that notion because it makes it sound like it takes some of the glamour out of marriage. No, the work becomes rewarding whenever you're both putting in the work together and you're getting better together as a marriage. But to have the right mindset going in, to know that it's not just going to be all lovey-dovey like the movies or TV shows make it out to be, but to know that there's actual work, and in the process, you both will become better people together and you both become stronger together if you make the commitment to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, you go from high school sweethearts to husband and wife. It's talk about a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're not, you don't have a surviving marriage until you've had real issues, real problems to deal with, and experience real loss together. That's when a marriage really evolves to the next level. But thanks for the call. Appreciate you listening.
That's a good one, caller.
Yep.
You made some great points there. It's all about having the right mindset going in, and just making sure that you're not just looking at it and pie in the sky.
That's right.
All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're on Offsides. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Hi, man. On the marriage issue, I was married 17 years, and I went through a divorce. And one thing that my ex-wife told me, she said, when we got married, it was more like she just wanted to get out and play house.
I was getting ready to use that term. A lot of people just want to play house, and they think that means they want to be married, but they don't. They want to play house.
Right. So it was like, you leave mom and dad's house and you move in, and then that's why all these things aren't working out. So older and wiser.
Yeah. Good for you.
Thank you, caller.
Thanks for calling.
232-1542, 232-1542. You know what you were talking about, Shannon, earlier, what you were talking about women changing. What was interesting was in some of the research that I was doing about this, it talked about how, and this is William Doherty, a marriage therapist and professor of family social science at University of Minnesota. He talked about the changes in divorce rates and such, and he said it's interesting because it come in many ways. He says you're talking about changes in women's expectations, which goes to what you were talking about earlier. He said 2/3 of divorces are actually initiated by women.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I was reading recently that 85% of all divorces are initiated by the woman.
And
and it might be because of what you just said. In many cases, that since they have changed, their expectations of what their marriage should be right now.
Right.
Okay, because that's the difference. Okay, doesn't matter what your expectations were of the marriage at the time you got married.
Yeah.
Okay, you have expectations constantly. So a woman's expectations may change, and the man's not able to live up to that.
And what's interesting is when you look at the stereotype on TV, a lot of times it's the stereotypical, well, the man cheated on the woman and that's what ended their marriage.
Yeah.
Well, in reality, there's a lot of other factors that play into that because, you have those situations there where some guys may do that and some guys do that. But then you have a lot of what we just talked about here, where one person is changing and the other person is not.
That's right.
And all of a sudden they really find themselves at odd a few years down the line.
Good.
232-1542. Caller, you're on Offsides. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Having been married for 44 years,
Wow.
being a veteran, having been separated for 10 years with the military, the bottom line to it all is if you don't talk to each other, it will never last.
Yeah.
It will never last if you don't talk to each other.
Yeah, it's a strong point. Without communication, there's no communication. I know that sounds redundant, but it's true. You got to have those lines of communication, and you can't just do it. Listen, text messaging doesn't count. All right,
No.
You can't depend on text
talking to each
messaging for communication in a relationship.
But the whole thing, like I said, young people get together and, boy, they want to talk and talk and talk. But as soon as they get married, they quit talking.
Yeah, I hear you.
Keeping those lines of communication open. That caller makes a great point. I mean, thank you, caller. I mean, it's age old, but yet in this day where we're surrounded by new ways to communicate, we often find ourselves miscommunicating with
That's
each
right.
other
Text
a lot of
messaging.
times because of our communication devices.
That's exactly right.
232-1542, 232-1542. I love hearing that, by the way, from that last caller. 44 years of marriage. That is unbelievable. And that is I bet that's a wealth of knowledge right there. 232-1542, caller, you're on Offsides. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I believe a lot of people are in too much of a rush to get into marriage nowadays. And I know for me, it took me probably about 10 years after I graduated from high school, but I wanted to spend some time being single. And I spent a lot of time dating, and I would figure out what I would not want in a woman by dating. Like, okay, didn't like, so on the next one, I got to make sure that she doesn't have this.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'll go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, and then another thing that my wife and I did before we got married, we talked about a lot of things like, what are we going to do in this case? Do we want to have kids? Do we not? Because a lot of people, they don't even talk about those sorts of things. And then they get married, and it's like one didn't even want kids, and the other one does.
Yeah, that's a mess.
That might have been something y'all talked about.
Yeah, and you said something I think that's quite significant. Somebody, you got to know what you don't want as much as you got to know what you want. Everybody has a pretty clear idea of what they think they want, and most of the time it's accurate. But people say, okay, I know what I want in a relationship. I know what I want in a husband or a wife. But it's just as important, and in many cases more important, for you to know what you don't want and how to avoid it.
Because you may think that you're able to, I guess, put up with what you don't want and think that what you wants outweigh it. But then when you get involved, it may not happen that way.
Yeah, you might want somebody that's a lot of fun, that wants to go out and party, right? And because you like that, and that's fun, and nothing wrong with it, okay? So you might want somebody that is wants to go to a lot of clubs and be very social, but you don't want an alcoholic. Okay? Point. So you got to think about that, okay? So if you want somebody that likes to go out drinking and partying, you got to think, well, wait a minute. I want somebody like that, but there needs to be some limits because this person could develop some bad habits.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, thanks for the call, man.
Gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
232-1542, 232-1542. Caller, you're on Offsides. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got to tell you guys what I've found. I've looked out. I'm 5 years in. And I love my wife very much. And what I think set us apart and what got us a good ground is we met and I deployed right after we met. So I had about 7 months of 21 questions while I was deployed. So we had the verbal portion, knocked out quick. And that somebody said communication. I mean, that's the first thing is you have to communicate. You don't communicate, you lose everything. Love is not, like you said, Brandon, love is not a emotion. It truly is a choice. Liking is an emotion. I think we use love too much today to describe too many things.
I'm with you on that, caller. I'm with you on that.
I know people, they start dating and 2 weeks later they're talking about how in love they are. You don't even know this person.
No, love is not an emotion. Love is a choice. It's a sacrifice. That's the whole point of love. It's to sacrifice yourself for that other person.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call.
Hey, that caller's right on. 232-1542. Caller, you up next. Go ahead.
Kind of listening to y'all, and I believe sometimes that the couple would rather look good together than be good together. The thing about that is if you're going by that basis, then that person is kind of shallow, and they're not willing to give, or And if you're not willing to give in a relationship, it tends not to work, and that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, that's another big issue between couples a lot is that there's people that are very superficial, especially today, because people are, I want to say they're emotionally challenged because of social media, especially young people. They've grown up unable to learn the skills of expressing their emotions, unable to develop regular communication skills. And so they grow into young adults and they get into relationships and they have no clue how to talk to one another or how to express what's going on in their mind, how to express what they're feeling. And they're sunk. They're just setting themselves up for failure. And so it may come across as they're being very shallow and they're very superficial. And in many ways they are, but it's because they're stifled themselves emotionally because of social media.
Right. Well, how many good relationships could be out there that are out there. Like, you know, you might have a woman that's a gorgeous woman, and you may have a guy who's maybe not so good looking, but you know what, got a heart of gold. How many women would actually choose a guy that's got a heart of gold over looks?
Yep. You'd be surprised, my friend. You know, I seriously now, I know some women that are more comfortable being with men that are not attractive, okay? Because they need the security of being the more attractive person in the relationship. And listen, if that's what works, whatever. I don't care, you know. But, you know, that does exist a whole lot. Physical appearance is less important to the woman than it is to the man.
You're right.
Thanks for the call, brother.
All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up next. Go ahead.
Hey, guys, y'all always have interesting topics.
Thank you.
You're talking about men and women and relationships. I ran across something very humorous today, you know, kind of describing how they look at things. And there's this guy, and his wife didn't come home that night, and she said she spent the night with a friend. So he proceeded to call 10 of her friends, and none of the women said, no, she didn't stay here. She wasn't here that night. None of them said she was there. The wife, the husband comes on. The wife said, you know, he tells the wife he spent the night with a friend. She called 10 of his friends. 7 said he spent the night there, and 3 of them said he's still there.
Oh, man.
So communication, but, you know, I mean, it just, I thought it was humorous, and I think it explains everything, and even the females that I said that to got a kick out of it, you know.
Thanks for the call, man.
Thank you, caller.
That's
All
funny.
right, 232-1542, 232-1542.
Welcome back to Offsides, everybody. Shannon Wilkerson and Brandon Comeaux. We'll be with you a few more minutes until 6 o'clock. We've been discussing divorce and divorce rates in Louisiana. Unfortunately, Louisiana ranks 4th highest in the United States for divorce rates. And so that's kind of sad to think that we can't work. You know, it's just another thing that we're not very good at.
Yeah.
So we got some callers been patiently waiting. We appreciate that. So let's go to the phone line and see what they want to say.
Go ahead, caller. You're on Offsides.
I was calling to give a woman's perspective on divorce.
Yeah, please do.
My thoughts are a lot of times as young girls, women fantasize about getting married. So sometimes we ignore all of the signs that are coming through that we shouldn't do it, but because we fantasized it for so long, we get caught up in that and we just worry about getting married instead of listening to the signs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That is.
You get the whole fairy tale idea, having the big wedding, you walk down the aisle, have the white dress, have a big party, and all the gifts and everything. I mean, it is a woman's, it's their day. Okay, I mean, the bride, they're the boss. And I can that affects, I can see how that can affect a young girl's perspective on things as they're growing up, because they always fantasize about that wedding day.
Well, again, like you talked about earlier, the expectations, reality not meeting those expectations.
Yep. Thanks for
exactly. And most of the time there are signs that you shouldn't do something, or you see certain things in people and you just choose to ignore it and move forward with it anyway. And then once you're married a couple of years down the road, you finally realize that that person is not going to change. But what you should have known is that that person wasn't who you thought they were in the beginning anyway.
Yeah, very true. Thanks for the call.
Thank you so much. All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up next. Go ahead. You ready, caller?
Yes.
All right, go for it.
Hello.
Okay. I was just wanting to tell you that I appreciate your programming, and yes, marriage, it's not 50-50. It's 100-100. You do everything you can to please your mate, and in return, they're going to want to please you.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's what it boils down to. And like you said, don't stop talking after the wedding day. Keep the communication open. Help each other out through everything. I mean, the vows they really mean something. They really, really mean something. And not enough people today are taking it seriously. It's like I've been hearing y'all talk about, it's just a fairy tale to some of the girls. They just want this big, elaborate
Yeah.
Not always the man. The woman's looking for someone else too.
Oh, let me tell you, after spending my whole adult life in the bar business, I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the call.
Thank you so much. 232-1542. Caller, you're on Offsides. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to give you another woman's point of view. The fairy tale thing, okay. I got married 2 weeks out of high school. Married, I knew him and we dated for 3 years before that. Married for 17 years. We had the communication, okay. When the papers were signed, it flipped on honeymoon night. He spilled the beans on all kind of stuff. I had clueless. I should have left that night. But I stayed with him for 17 years.
Yeah.
Huh.
So you can't say that, oh, the whole fairy tale thing. We were together for 3 years. I thought I knew everything. We talked about everything, children, everything. Signed the papers, did not want children. We said we wanted 7. Signed the papers, didn't want 1.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So you were misled.
Yeah. That's marriage under false pretenses.
Yeah.
Stayed with him, had a child 10 years later, divorced after that, and my son told me later, I wish you'd have had me whenever y'all first got married, got pregnant, and then we'd have had divorced when I was 17. I said, no, we'd have divorced earlier than that because I wouldn't have put up with it with a child that long.
Well, we're glad you got out of it. Thanks for the call.
Thank you, ma'am. 232-1542. Caller, you're up next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the reason why Louisiana is so high, just like any of the Gulf state states, is because of the guys working offshore or working in the industry that you got to be working out of town and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's unfaithfulness on both ends.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do have a lot of people that work offshore and they're gone, from home for extended periods of time. And even if it isn't infidelity, people grow apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
people grow
that
apart.
has a lot to do with it.
Sure does.
Because of our industry. I work in the industry. It ruined my first marriage, but
wow.
I said I'd never work out of town again.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you, caller. All right, 232-1542. Caller, you're up next. Go ahead.
Yes, I hear a lot of people talk about the divorce, and I'm actually going through a divorce. Been married about 12 years, and this last year I'm getting divorced, and it's almost final. But what ruined my marriage was a particular church, and and feminism. When you're married to a woman that thinks she can hit you, and I never hit my wife, but a woman that thinks she can hit her husband and get physically violent, that's one thing. So it's a combination of feminism and a cult, a religion where the preacher was angry because he was wrong on so many levels about so many things, and I chose to walk out. And my wife stabbed me in the back because of it. And because of that, after 5 to 7 years, it's been about 7 years, I guess, since I left. And I tried to make it work, and it couldn't work. It's not possible. Because, you see, I made up my mind. I got 3 kids. You can't stay in a relationship like that. You gotta get out.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did.
Well, and what's interesting, and caller, we thank you so much for sharing your story.
Appreciate that.
We really do. What was interesting was you're talking about in how they had the rapid rise in divorce during the 70s and the early 80s, but that happened at the same time as the new feminist movement.
That's right.
That was going on back then.
Well, I tell you, all too many women were in bad marriages, and divorce was not common, and you just stuck it out and you dealt with it. Excuse me. But let me tell you, when the women's movement came up and started making progress, a lot of women said, I've had enough of this. I don't have to be in this. I'm out.
Yeah.
Actually, you're out.
Yep. All right. Well, we got to leave it there.